Welcome into Three True Values as we break down what happened in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight and get you ready for the Final Four. That's right. We are approaching the final weekend of college basketball this season. Things will wrap up next Monday. So we're just a few days away from the end of the season. But as we all know, that is not where college basketball news stops. We have already plenty going on in the transfer portal, already some commitments, plenty of people entering. And as teams get eliminated, we will see more and more of them hit the portal. As we get more coaching changes, we will see more and more of them hit the portal. We will have plenty of shows beyond the end of the season. Next week, we will do a wrap-up show, kind of go through the season, everything that happened, the national champion, what we can take away from it. And then over the course of the next couple weeks, we'll probably do 1, 2, maybe even 3 more episodes where we go through the coaching changes across college basketball, what the new landscape is going to look like, and then eventually we will get to our transfer portal special. We'll see when that ends up coming in the summer. So as we get down to it, though, it's still NCAA tournament time. So we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here. We want to talk all about these 4 teams that advance. We get into the Elite Eight after Alabama knocks off North Carolina. Purdue survives against Gonzaga. Tennessee knocks off Creighton. Elsewhere, you've got Clemson, who beat Arizona. So we had some upsets in that round. Of course, UConn blew away San Diego State. Illinois survived against Iowa State, and then up in the top there, you had Duke beating Houston. Unfortunately, Jamal Shead went down with an injury. I think that played a big role in how that one played out in the end. And then NC State continued their Cinderella run as well, beating Marquette in a game that I really did not think they would be able to get through, but there they were, facing Duke. So we'll start there. The Cinderella run, the story everyone wants to talk about. DJ Burns, DJ Horn, Kevin Keats, the coach. Ben Middlebrooks comes in. Diarra on the in that big man rotation. Just so much to talk about with this NC State team, which was on a 4-game losing streak entering the ACC tournament. They trailed Louisville at halftime of the first game. They end up surviving against Virginia, who misses a free throw. And now here they go. They just are on a roll. They keep winning games. They have rolled through the ACC tournament from start to finish. They knock off, in addition to those teams that we talked about, they knock off Duke and North Carolina to win the ACC title, to clinch their spot in the NCAA tournament as an 11 seed. And then they have to play Texas Tech. They overcome that. They win that game, and what do they get as a reward? Well, Kentucky had lost on the other side of that bracket, and so they only have to beat Oakland to advance to a Sweet 16. And you think, okay, this Cinderella story is set up perfectly for the Wolfpack. They advance past Oakland, needed overtime to do it. That might have been the one they've struggled with the most so far in the postseason, but eventually they pull away, they survive, and they face Marquette. Tyler Kolek, Oso Ighodaro, that team has future NBA talent on it. Cam Jones, a really good scoring guard. We've talked about this Marquette team before. They've got a lot of really good pieces. But what they struggled to do was contain DJ Burns, who was able to use his court vision, because he's more than right now, and we'll get into more about DJ Burns here, but right now, today, facing DJ Burns is one of the toughest challenges in college basketball, because what you have to do is you have to guard DJ Burns as this imposing center who is going to make post moves around you and try to get to the rim, and as a distributor who is going to pick out passes and find the open man for an open 3. So when you see a big man down low, generally what you want to do is you want to blitz him, you want to hit him with the double team and make him pass out of it. Well, DJ Burns is possibly the best passer on the floor right now. And so he's always hitting the open man. And it becomes a lot easier to knock down shots when you're as open as these guys are. So we're in an interesting position here with NC State because, and this is what I was referencing just a minute ago that we're going to get to, DJ Burns wasn't this for the majority of the season. This is a guy who went from Tennessee to Winthrop, had some success there, and then transfers to NC State. In his first year at NC State, he was a good player, 12 points per game, rebounding, 4 or 5 rebounds a game. But his assist numbers are not through the roof. Even coming into this year, you look at his averages, just over 12 points a game. A guy who averages 4 to 5 rebounds. His assist numbers, not something that jump off the page to you. So when people sit down and ask, how did this NC State team not win more games? Well, they're getting something from their best player that he has not shown over a large sample size the way that he is in this NCAA tournament. It's one of the more incredible runs of performances that we've seen because you can see for 1 game, for 2 games. Look at Jack Golke for Oakland. He comes out and he has the performance of his life against Kentucky, and it all pays off for him. DJ Burns has now sustained that life-altering performance for almost 10 consecutive games. He's been doing it for a month now. And so it's been incredible to watch this transition and how he plays and how he performs and what it has done for this team as a whole. Now, I've seen people say all kinds of things about DJ Burns, his future. Can he play at the next level? Can he do this? Can he do that? If he can be this, if he can play the way that he is playing right now over these last couple of weeks, if this was all the film we had, I'd say yes. He could be a backup center kind of in that Jokic mold. I say Jokic mold very loosely because there's one Jokic out there in the world right now. But there have been centers in the past who are that distributor, who use their body, work down low, set screens, and hit angles. He could be that. But that's not what we saw him be for the majority of his college career. And so as a 6th-year senior, how much stock do we put into that? That's going to be the question for any talent evaluators that are interested in him as a potential 2nd-round pick or an undrafted free agent. But they might have some competition. As Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl mentioned, that NFL scouts are now starting to look at DJ Burns. They're interested in his footwork, his size at 6'9", with that weight, the potential of putting him on an offensive line and lining him up with those feet, with that kind of vision that he has, and seeing what he can do on a football field. That would be an extremely interesting storyline to follow. As we know, Mark Vital, another Final Four hero from a few years ago at Baylor, he tried his hand in the NFL for a little while, bounced around a couple rosters, made a couple paychecks, and ended up getting something more than he probably would have gotten out of the game of basketball beyond college. So DJ Burns, if the NBA stuff doesn't work out, if the scouts don't think it translates, maybe he goes to the NFL. Who knows what happens here? I think that would just add to this storyline and how crazy it really is in the grand scheme of things in the game of basketball. But they're going to have to play against Purdue, which we know has Zach Edey and Braden Smith. Those two really carried this team through the NCAA tournament to this point, and they're ready to try to avenge the Matt Painter narrative that is surrounding this Purdue team, and I think they have. I think after this, in the Final Four, you have avenged last year's first-round exit. The Final Four is this prestigious place. Once you're there, whatever happens, happens. But once you're in the Final Four, you have avenged everything. Now, I will say, I saw this floating around. Purdue, despite making it to the Final Four, still has the chance to lose to a double-digit seed in the NCAA tournament for the 4th consecutive year. So, I think they will beat NC State. We'll get to that in just a minute. But it's good. There's still going to be people talking about this Purdue program. There's no way around it. Zach Edey, I want to address in this segment here, Zach Edey is going to face DJ Burns. Before we get into that matchup, though, This whole narrative around Zach Edey, and I understand that there's a lot more casual fans, a lot more fans who don't watch the entirety of the college basketball season, who have their focus on this sport during March. Fully understand that. And I get that Zach Edey does not play the most pleasing brand of basketball for you to watch for 40 minutes. But it's crazy to me how people discount and discredit watching one of the best college basketball players we have seen in years. Zach Edey is going to become a 2-time National Player of the Year, potentially unanimous. I don't think it'll be quite unanimous. There will be some who hold out and go with Dalton Knecht. I think that's a mistake. Zach Edey is the Player of the Year. Go look at his team's record, how far his team made it. I mean, he beat Knecht head-to-head here. Go look at his analytics, box score, any numbers you want to look at are going to tell you Zach Edey. And then the eye test, look, it's not about, is it boring? It's about whether it's effective. Is he the most effective college basketball player? Yes. It's not very close. So this attempt to discredit that because it's boring is a little bit out of hand. He is 7'4" and moving up and down the basketball court, making an impact on offense and defense. That is incredible, even in a vacuum. And this idea that he's just too tall. Go look at how many tall guys are sitting on the bench of all of these teams. Height has nothing to do with it. What he combines is height, skill set, and strength. That combination of three things is what makes Zach Edey the player that he is. He goes out there, and the foul count has become a whole topic. First of all, it's a different refereeing crew all through the NCAA tournament. And if you go look at the foul numbers throughout the entirety of the season, they're consistent. This is not something that popped up in the NCAA tournament. This is how Zach Edey is officiated. You don't have to like it, but here's the reality. It's backed up by the rules of basketball. There is no conspiracy here. Most of the fouls that you will see called in the paint result from two things. One, and this is the most common, is swiping down at the ball. When your hands come down, there is a increased chance that you are going to be called for a foul. Not only because there's an increased chance that you catch the arm while moving downward because their arms are generally going up, but also because it looks worse to the official. That's just a fact. You swipe down towards an arm. If they're at an angle, they don't see it head on, well, then it looks like you hit their arm whether you did or not. Zach Edey doesn't do that. He plays with his arms straight up more than just about anyone in college basketball because he's 7'4", and he can almost hide the rim from the opposing player by doing that. So that cuts down his foul count. And then the other thing that gets people in trouble in the paint, why they commit fouls, is jumping, because you've got to maintain verticality. That's the rule. Verticality, you've got to go up and down. You cannot, lean your arms forward during the process. You can't move into the player. You can't be moving side to side or backwards. You have to be stationary. You can go up and down, but you have to be in the same spot. Zach Edey doesn't have to jump. So the chances that he is moving forward or backwards or side to side are significantly lower than anyone else on the court who attempts to do that. If he doesn't jump, then he cannot lunge into a player. So yeah, he doesn't commit very many fouls, but that is based on his size and his strength. So on the other end, I know he does rack up a lot of fouls. People do foul him a lot, but look at his arms. I mean, he's getting hit because, like I said, the things that get you in trouble are jumping into people and swiping down. Well, how are you going to stop this 7'4" guy from putting the ball in the rim over your head? Probably by jumping to try to get to the ball, or by swiping when you see it come down. So it's just basics of basketball here. That's what's happening when Zach Edey is drawing these foul calls. And it can be frustrating, sure, because it breaks up the flow of the game. But that's just the fact of the matter. That is how basketball is officiated at almost every level. And so he has an advantage based on that. But then he's got the skill to follow through with it, to knock down those free throws, to battle through contact, to get the and one call, to grab the rebound through traffic. He's doing all of these things. And so now we get to his matchup with DJ Burns, and I think this is where DJ Burns is going to struggle quite a bit, because DJ Burns cannot draw the other team into foul trouble because Edey does not commit fouls. And he's not going to be able to make his post moves and get over the top of his defender. He's going to be tested as a distributor more than ever. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Purdue leave Zach Edey at home and see if they can guard one-on-one in that matchup in order to minimize the amount that DJ Burns is able to pass the ball out to the perimeter. That's where I think that things get tough for NC State in this matchup. I think that it's just unfortunately not one that favors them. Now, on the other end, Zach Edey, he has not faced somebody who has the strength to move him out of the lane like DJ Burns in quite a while. So can DJ Burns keep him off the boards more than he would want? Can he keep him out of the lane more than he wants to be? That's going to be interesting on the other side. That's where Braden Smith is going to come in. Zach Edey will have to pass back out of that, and it'll be on Braden Smith to create something out of the play. So there's both sides are going to present each other challenges. I just think Purdue has the upper hand here. I would pick them to advance to the national title game. When we come back on the other side, we're going to break down the other side of the bracket. We'll talk about UConn against Alabama and then get you ready. I'm going to make my predictions for the national championship. Who's going to be lifting that crown on Monday night right here on 3 True Values. Welcome back into 3 True Values. We are breaking down the Final Four, and now we head to the other side of the bracket. We've given you a full breakdown of Purdue and NC State. Now it's time to talk about UConn against Alabama. We'll start with how UConn got here. The Huskies blew out Illinois using a 30-0 run to do so. Donovan Clingan had possibly his best game in college. Just absolute dominance. This for the second time in this NCAA tournament, he registered 8 or more stocks. That's steals plus blocks for those of you who don't follow it as a collective stat. Incredible defensive impact. He also gave them something on offense. He's gotten better and better on the boards. His rebounding has improved over the course of the year. And he's seen his draft stock soar. As a 7'2", I've heard he's 7'3" in shoes. As a 7'2", 7'3" center, his movement has improved greatly to the point that in that game against Illinois, the Illini shot 0 for 19 from the field when contested by Donovan Clingan. And if you go watch the tape, 2, 3, 4 of those shots came from the perimeter where he was closing out to a shooter, got his hand in the lane, and didn't block all of them. I think he did block one of them, if I remember correctly from the film. I don't know if it got credited or not, but he's getting out there with a little bit of quickness. He's getting down the floor well as well. Donovan Clingan has taken his game to a completely different level over the course of this NCAA tournament and over the course of the last month, also dating back to the Big East tournament. So for him to be in this kind of form, you pair that with Tristan Newton, with Steph Castle, Alex Karaban and Cam Spencer complement those three. So this starting lineup is as good as it gets. And I think that they are just too much for anyone to handle right now across college basketball. The scoring margins that they are putting up, averaging wins in the 20s, beating teams by over 20 points in the NCAA tournament, not just in the NCAA tournament. It's one thing to do it to the 16 seed. They have done it now to a 5 seed and to a 3 seed in consecutive games, just absolutely running them out of the gym in the second half. And that's the craziest thing about this, is that they're going to play you in that first half, and it's going to feel like, okay, they're the better team, but we're playing with them. And then they turn it on. Whatever it is that Dan Hurley is saying in that locker room is working so far and has really just made this UConn team look completely untouchable. So for UConn, key is just keep going. That's really all you have to do to continue this run. Of course, they make it to the Final Four. They will play Alabama. And this Alabama team, I do want to talk about a little bit as well. The first Final Four in school history. How about that for this Crimson Tide program, which has been going for over 100 years now. They've had success under different coaches, being able to go to the NCAA tournament. But if you look at where Nate Oates inherited this program, where it was at, there was a little bit of success. They had brought in a 5-star recruit in Colin Sexton just a few years before. He led them to the second round of the NCAA tournament, but not much NCAA tournament success to speak of. It was a hit or miss kind of team. They floated around the middle of the conference standings for most of the years that Avery Johnson was there. You look back before that, and it had been 2004, the only other time that they made an Elite Eight run under Mark Gottfried, that they really had any amount of sustained success, any amount of consistency. And Nate Oates comes in the first year, they don't make the NCAA tournament. But since then, he has got this thing rolling. They continue to make, in his 5 years, they continue to go to the NCAA tournament. They make Sweet 16, an early exit, and then another Sweet 16, and now they make it to the Final Four. So this is an upward trajectory for this Alabama basketball program, and it's been an incredible run for this Crimson Tide group. Not the team that you would have expected to make this deep of a run. Last year's team, of course, the number 1 overall seed, but they get upset by San Diego State. This year, though, the bracket breaks right for them. I talked about St. Mary's would have been a big challenge for them. They end up drawing Grand Canyon instead. And I hope that nobody takes that as a slight to Alabama, because this is what the NCAA tournament is. I mean, you can say the same thing about any of these teams. Maybe Iowa State would have been a tougher challenge for UConn. Maybe if Houston didn't have to face Duke, maybe they would have survived even without Jamal Shead. Purdue, if they had to face Tennessee and Creighton instead of Tennessee or Creighton. Who knows how all of this would have played out. But for Alabama, it broke right. And you end up, you get through Grand Canyon after Charleston. Charleston, of course, no slouch. Look, their coach just got hired at Louisville. So that was a program that was being run extremely well. Then you get North Carolina. And that was your big challenge. And that's what I said. They have one upset to make here to get to the Elite Eight. They could tie school history by making one upset here. And that's about the best you could hope for. If you're this Alabama team, they're able to pull it off. They played extremely well. People had their doubts in that game, but Alabama pulls it out without Latrell Wrightsell. I think that's really important, because if he comes back for this Final Four, which it sounds like he's attempting to from a head injury, they can hit another level. They can hit another gear from what they were this past weekend. But they get through North Carolina, and now suddenly you've tied school history, and you're thinking, well, we can make some school history. We can make the first Final Four in the history of this program. You look down at the other side of the bracket, and Clemson has knocked off Arizona. They've upset them. So you now have one upset to make on your path to the Final Four. They took care of business against Clemson in a great game. I thought Clemson played very well. I thought Alabama countered it extremely well and figured out how to win the game down the stretch. Mark Sears was huge in that effort. Grant Nelson, this past week has been a big week for Grant Nelson in the NCAA tournament. He has performed very well, I thought. And so when you combine that with them getting hot from the perimeter, they've shot the ball well from three. This Alabama team is very dangerous. The way that they play will win basketball games. I know some people wanted to question that. No, there was never any question in my mind. This brand of basketball will win you basketball games. And when they're playing better on the defensive end, which they have been here in the last couple of weeks, they are a real title contender under Nate Oates with the type of rosters that he has put together year after year. You cannot rule them out at all. We'll see. I mean, we know defense was the question for this team. It always was from the start of this season to the end. Defense was where they had to step up. Latrell Wrightsell will help that even more when he comes back from his injury. But for Alabama, the difference on their defense, I think, is a lot of effort, a lot of pride, a lot of commitment to making this type of run in the NCAA tournament. Because it's not like they got better defensive personnel. They didn't magically shift schemes here. They're not doing much that's different. They're just doing it at a more, a better pace. They're doing it with more commitment, with more grit. They're willing to do things that they maybe weren't willing to do before, and it's paying off for them. They're seeing that play out, and I think that carries well into next year as they look to build a roster that maybe has a little bit more defensive talent, and then it comes with that commitment to that end of the floor, knowing where it can take you once you get to March. So for this Alabama team, a great run to get to this point, some thrilling games over the last week, and now here they are in the Final Four representing the SEC. They will take on UConn. I think UConn they're just too good. They're too good here for anyone to really match up with them. Alabama, I will say, Alabama is the biggest threat to this UConn team to date. They will be the most likely team to pull off some kind of upset because what they offer is the ability to knock down threes, to trade threes for twos. And when you trade threes for twos, you have a chance. If they come out and they hit 50, 60% of their threes, then yes, they can pull this off because it's just so hard to overcome that volume of three-pointers that they're going to put up. Because we talk about a team that probably is going to shoot 30 to 40 threes over the course of this game. Well, you start talking about taking 30 attempts from the three-point line and shooting 50%, that's 45 points coming from the three-point line. That's such a head start that you're going to have a chance. You're going to be in that game. So don't rule out this Alabama team, but they're going to have to get hot from three. And I think that one of the issues that they will face in getting some of these open looks that they would want is that a lot of them come off of Estrada or Sears, sometimes Wrightsell and Grant Nelson drives to the basket. And then you kick it to the corner and then you swing it to the top of the key and then you're wide open or just to the corner, whatever the case is. It's a lot of touch the paint and get it back outside. That's what Alabama wants to do. They want to switch sides of the floor. They want to get multiple passes. That's what the offense is predicated on. It becomes harder to do that when there's less threat of a shot at the rim driving into Donovan Clingan. That's going to be the biggest issue I think that they have is convincing that UConn defense to suck in to stop the drive when they know that Clingan is behind them. Perhaps having Grant Nelson on the floor at that 5 spot will help in certain respects because Grant Nelson will play further towards the three-point line. He will be in the corner. He will be up at the top of the key, and Clingan will have to make a decision, and that defense as a whole will have to make a decision. Do we switch it so that someone else is guarding him out there, or does Clingan step further towards the three-point line to be out there guarding Grant Nelson, who we know can knock down shots, can get going to the rim. He can do a variety of things there. So that's going to be what UConn is going to have to show is how they want to guard those actions. But I think that Donovan Clingan, his defensive presence has been so intimidating. I just said Illinois, the number one offense in the country, went 0 for 19 when he contested their shots. So I just think it's too much to handle. This UConn team is clicking on too many cylinders, and I'm picking them to make it to the national championship game, where we would get UConn versus Purdue in a national title game. And there I'm riding with UConn to become your back-to-back national champions, to follow up as the first school to do that since Florida over a decade ago. I think this UConn team has everything they need to do it. And I think that if you're going to stop Purdue, what do you need? You need somebody who can stop Zach Edey. Well, hey, Donovan Clingan is going to be the closest thing that we have seen. Perhaps DJ Burns is stronger, but in terms of size, Donovan Clingan is right there with him. I just said 7'2", 7'3" in shoes versus a 7'4" Zach Edey. Well, we're talking about 1-2 inch difference. That becomes a lot less of an asset for Zach Edey to utilize. You couple that with the interior presence of Clingan, his defensive abilities around that rim, and I think Edey is going to have to work as hard as he's ever had to work to get shots to go down. So I think that you've got the matchup there if you're UConn to succeed defensively. And then you pair that with, they've got the perimeter guys to handle things as well. Tristan Newton will be out there, Steph Castle. We've mentioned all the names before. They've got the guys to guard on the perimeter. I think they're also better athletes surrounding that core group as well. And so I just think that they will have the upper hand there against Purdue. I do think it will be close though, because Edey's going to get into his game. He's not just going to be stopped. You're not going to stop Zach Edey. You have to hope to slow him down or to make him work harder than he would like to work, and hopefully open up things for your team in doing so. So that is my prediction. I'm going with UConn to win the national title. That's been my pick for a while now, but I'm entrenched in it, and we will see how it all plays out over the course of the next week. We'll come back here on Tuesday, and we will break down the whole season, everything that happened, the Final Four, the national championship game. Will crown someone the kings of college basketball, and talk about everything else that is going on right here on 3 True Values. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week.